Yes, and it's recording.
Okay. So, for example, now there will be people who are funding the project.
Mm-hmm.
Will they be the same who will design the chair, or you have to gather?
Well, there is a possibility you don't need to. So you can do either or both.
I meant from your side, you will need to gather a partially new community.
Well, it goes like this. So support or any pledge on Indiegogo gives you the possibility to access the early network. But the goal of the network is to be, in the end, free and open to anyone. Just in this phase, while we use the origin as first, the pilot project, it will be limited to, so one cannot just come and open an account and start their projects. It will start from this one, expanding to more, and the network gets built like that.
And how do you build in this phase the network? From which channels do you get people?
So one is the Indiegogo supporters. Any pledge minimum grants you a username and password, basically, and you can join the open design process. There is also a way that if for whatever reason someone doesn't want to participate in financing the thing, they can write us a letter asking, look, I didn't give any money, but I'd like to join.
And how many people do you expect?
I have no idea. I can estimate in so it can work with as little as 5 people to begin with, and it can go up. But
And what if 2 people have contradicting ideas? You interfere as a moderator?
no, that's the beauty of the open source mechanics that are crucial to this. So there is this concept called forking, and it works basically well with code, with open source code. You post your entire work to it's called Git, and anyone can freely open it, make modifications, and so it either gets merged back or stays a separate project.
Merged back by who?
Well, by whoever is running the project. In this case, it will be me.
Mm.
So, if someone does something I don't agree with, they can keep going separately, and then maybe later on I will take elements of it and use it back into, let's call it, the central project, and there is no need for approval of the either side, so we can be very much in contradiction. We're still free to use bits and pieces of each other's work.
And what if they get stuck?
Who?
Especially, like there are this bunch of people who are coming up with ideas which might be professionally totally useless. Like they figure out something which is, as a designer, it's not good, it's not gonna work. Not subjectively ugly or something, it's not working. And what do you do?
Well, that's why it's hard to. What your question implies is the structure and order of things of conventional design process, where you have a tangible goal of delivering a product which will sell, and so even if I think it's hideous and stupid, and it might work for the person that made it,
The chair collapses.
the chair collapses, they can go back to the drawing board, start over. It still can be a good step. Look, in conventional design process, we do this. It's called whatever. You go to the extremes to try to define the domain, and on the line, the chair will collapse. But that's useful data for you, so you know how far can you push a certain element until it collapses, and then you map it. You say, okay, here the chair will collapse. And often the only way to do it is by actually building a chair that will collapse, and then you say, okay, this and that value is limited by this.
But what about the money?
Well, their money. What money?
Well, that I put some money to build this chair, but it collapses. And now I'm disappointed and sad, and I don't have money to build another chair.
Well, you could do worse with your money, I think, and you can. So that's. I'll get back to a little bit what is contained in the origin as a design so far. And well, I will get to it in a minute.
Ah, okay.
So if we come to a point where someone on their own goes and builds a chair that will collapse, it's valuable information first and foremost for themselves if they do decide and make a little bit more money and build a new one which might not collapse. But also this knowledge acquired is freely available to infinite number of people potentially that won't make that same mistake, or if that makes sense.
What does it contain?
What?
The design of origin.
The design work, yes. Well, it deliberately doesn't go into these details. So we have basically two elements. There is the frame, which is a rigid structure. It doesn't go into what material it is made of, or how can be broken down to pieces and put together, because that requires we have to say, okay, it's made out of wood, and you can make it obviously out of 3 or more pieces, and then you go like this to assemble them, and then there is the other element, which is the seat, which is elastic. It's suspended on these 3 points. And then you should also decide what material it's made of, how do you connect it to the structure of the frame so it all fits together as a...
Do you have anything in mind that this chair, like for whom it's working for? Like
Well,
kind of a target group.
It's again deliberately made to reduce all kinds of so it inherits this from, let's say, modernism, where you reduce it to which works mostly today in pretty much anything, to a bare minimum, so that it is open to interpretation, and try to keep it wide, but it leaves space for out of these basic elements to be built in any direction, to any preference of individual user.
And from this main branch of this project, you will carry out the production itself?
Well, it's planned to start with one chair, where we take these elements and build them in a way, probably through few cycles of trial and error, that it is the basic. And then, according to demand, I have planned for another 10, but it can be lower or higher if I see a great demand. Instead of 10, we have to think in hundreds, then it changes significantly the manufacturing process, and in sense of it scales very well, the design. It can be handmade in single pieces, or it can be mass produced. It doesn't really...
But if I participate in the design process, isn't my motivation is that I will be able to purchase one chair?
Of course.
So like one is too few?
Sorry?
One to produce only one chair is too few, because you will have...
Well, the goal of this one is actually, in the most literal of senses, a prototype. So you get to materialize one which is the example for if it's 10 or 100 or whatever to come. Nah.
And what will you use the money for?
The money.
That they give you here?
The money should cover, so it's very important to know that any money that comes in from now on will be used for things to be made. It won't cover anything done so far. And so the goal was set based on some previous experiences with similar approach to small production, that it should cover the expenses of this arbitrary production of 10 chairs plus the prototype and the development of the network, which is they go hand in hand. They cannot be separated, and it assumes about 9 months roughly until the point where we have a working prototype and are ready to manufacture the actual 10 chairs for 10 backers that have made it possible. But the most important is the knowledge acquired, which can be used for later development, further working towards the goal.
What's this later?
Well, later this prototype of the network, which is very limited in the sense that it's accessible to a limited number of people working on one project, will literally open up to anything and anyone.
Like I'm just going there, have an idea that I want to create a shoe, and I put up
Exactly.
my project, like how you put up something on Indiegogo.
Well, differently, because Indiegogo doesn't deal with any specifics. It's a platform for funding, and that's it. The network should be all inclusive, but focusing on using the logic of open source with the goal of manufacturing physical objects. So it is very different than a crowdfunding platform.
And it will be like one site where you go, you have your own account.
That we
profile.
will see. It can be like that. It can also be more fragmented, not so centralized. Depending on, that's why it's important to not have this projection of how a network should look and function, but decide as we go. If we would rather use existing tools, I don't know, if people would rather use Google Hangouts and not some internal ways of communication that is in this monolithic kind of a social network, then that's the way to go. And if we can use the existing service, the key is, if there is one goal with this network, is to eliminate the barrier to entry. It should be very instantaneous. So if someone wants to start working on a shoe, they can, without many obstacles, start doing that, not trying to figure out the infrastructure. And of course, it's mostly about the community, so there must be a point where all these things come together and can interact.
And how would you describe the possible motivations of a user participating in the origin? Let's keep it simple, not
No, it can be also less simple, but where I use this, which is a very much simplified but very accurate so it's this scratching the itch thing. Most of the open source software begins with an individual solving their own problem, and then at the same time this solution may also be used by a wider community. And in such cases, usually people care more about one or the other, but it ends up being something useful and something that can be built on by someone else, and blah blah blah. And the motivation to participate in the origin itself is either you like the chair and you would like it to, one way or another, become a piece of furniture that you own, or you feel that this is a good direction of things and you want to support that. Maybe you hate the chair, but you want in a year this platform where you might start working on your perfect fishing pole. And then if you don't want to learn how to use GitHub and get tangled into legal issues, you recognize that this is something that can be useful again to yourself and the whole wide world. So you decide to chip in and just watch it develop, and yeah.
And what is your motivation?
My motivation, good question. I came in a previous project close to so questioning and challenging these established chains of how design is executed, and got in touch with. So the idea was to take further this interaction between the designer and the consumer, try to switch roles, see things from different points of view, and then came in the discovery and fascination with the free software, the open source methodologies, ethos, and the free culture, which we all use but are not too aware of. Or then I started researching these, and I came in a point in my life where I can also stop, look at where I am, what I'm doing, and think about what would I really want to do. Again, it's scratching the itch. I want to first of all help myself as a designer. What would be the ideal environment in this day and age for this expression to be, and then try to come as close to that as possible. But there are more motivations, I really believe. Given the proper devices, people are creative, and there is less and less excuse not to do things proactively. And it is weird, why are these things not happening already? And